Hurt people have a lot of work to do. We think your responsibility is to your own feelings, and most urgently to your own pain. Most humans nowadays greatly misunderstand pain. They tend to go to great lengths to avoid it, to distract from it, to try and pretend like they don't have it, to try and dismiss it in whatever way is the most convenient. I would say that the majority of capitalistic industry today is built around selling coping mechanisms. Entertainment, drugs, various forms, distracting, I guess there's a lot that falls under entertainment, but we don't need to go into it. Um, in reality, pain is something that, like all emotions, carries a lot of very useful information. And uh, on a deeper level, is very much a part of what makes us who we are, what forms our mind, and over a much longer time, our bodies. It is a fundamental part of being a biological being, having pain. And when you try to run away from that pain, try to distract from it, try to make it go away without processing it, then you don't get any of the benefits from the pain. But it still influences you just indirectly by being something that you want to avoid. And so you still have to deal with it. You have to deal with it for much longer than you would have if you had just processed it when it came up. And you don't get any of the benefits that you would have gotten if you had processed it. And so this is the world of humans today. A bunch of creatures trapped by their own pain, being sold ways to delay dealing with that pain. And the whole process of that complex going on is extremely toxic to the planet as well as all the creatures involved. Really, I should say it's only toxic to the creatures involved because the planet itself, apart from any connection it might have with the creatures living on it, uh, is perfectly fine with these uh, ecosystem changes. You know, planet's been through a lot of much more severe, different ages in terms of makeup of the surface and atmosphere, but that's besides the point. We suspect that possibly initiations were a vital psychological component to human development, and uh, so-called civilized cultures tend to do away with those. And we suspect that that might lead to a lot of emotional turmoil, um, emotional dysregulation, and immaturity, being unable to face our own emotions, which is really all that you need to do to process your own emotions. It gets a bit more complicated than that, especially when you have things like complex PTSD, which many humans today have. Um, we would say definitely a majority, maybe a vast majority. And as we have shared before, there are plenty of resources on how to go about these things when you do have complex PTSD. But the fundamentals, when you get down to it, all you have to do to process your emotions is to face them, to allow them to say what they have to say, and allow yourself to receive it and be affected by it. Because, again, all emotions carry valuable information. That's why they're there. That's why they are a part of creatures, biological beings. That's why they evolved. That's why they're still here, because they are a vital part of helping you survive. They are the information that you need to stay alive. Most humans tend to get by on reason and logic alone, and they may open up when some good feelings come along. But as soon as some negative feelings come up again, they start to close down. They start to return to their coping mechanisms. And that isn't a harmless process. That has an effect over time. When you go through that cycle. And we've been through that cycle. We have absolutely been in most of the places, in all of the places that we've described, all of the human predicaments. But we found the resources that were available and we did the work. And we're not completely emotionally liberated now, but we are much, much better. And we know how to handle our own emotions. And we think that that is the responsibility that most humans have been that we think that that is what responsibility is handling your own emotions. That there are offshoots and gray areas and complications, and it's just a word in the first place and semantics and whatever, but that is what we think the core idea of responsibility is. The idea behind that word responsibility is handling your own emotions. And handling, processing, listening to, we don't have a favorite terminology, but you know what we mean. Listening to your emotions when they come up, processing them. Because it's your responsibility, because nobody else can do that for you. Absolutely no one. No one can process your emotions for you. It doesn't matter how much you describe them. It doesn't matter how many therapy sessions you go to. Nobody else can ever process your emotions for you. And it's your responsibility, because when you don't process your emotions, then I have to choose my words carefully here. When you don't process your emotions, that pain spills out and it can affect others. And it's not the end of the world to hurt someone else with your own pain. Everyone hurts others in some way or another. It's part of life, but the people you're around, your friends, your family, your neighbors, they 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 get hurt from your own unprocessed pain. And I trust you probably don't want that to happen. When there's a group of people and none of them have processed their pain, then it can just be a sort of spiraling well of pain bringing more pain. And instead of dealing with it, trying to cope with it, running away to something else. And doesn't that alleviates the pain momentarily. And let me be clear, coping isn't a bad thing. We use coping mechanisms all the time. Coping is very useful. Coping is very helpful. But it does not diminish the pain on any long-term scale. If if you are stressed in general, then yes, de-stress. Use whatever coping mechanisms you have. You know, cuddle a stuffed animal, watch a funny YouTube video, smoke weed, whatever. But if you don't do the work of sitting, learning how to process your pain, and then processing your pain, then it will never diminish and it will only get worse. So you can't just use coping mechanisms. That won't lead to a healthy emotional life. It simply won't. So this problem, humans abused relationship with pain. This is what we see as well, we see this as a very core problem to today's world, today's human world at least. A very pressing problem. And I hope after this video you can start to understand why we see that, why we think that. And it's understandable if even after even if this video has helped you understand why it's a problem and how it can be solved, it's understandable if you still feel nervous or perhaps disinterested or unconvinced that you should do any sort of emotional work. Let us just say that personally, doing this kind of emotional work is easily the the best decision we have made. It is in terms of leading to the greatest change and quality of life improvement for us in our life. It, nothing comes close to it. It changes everything. It changes It changes the way you operate day to day. It changes your outlook on your whole life, on the world. It is such a massive, unexpected change for the better that we didn't even think was possible before. And that's despite, like, I would say we were a Buddhist beforehand, and we definitely believed in like enlightenment and stuff, which we think that there's a very close connection between enlightenment and emotional work, but we'll not get into it right now. But even then, we didn't think that this sort of we didn't expect this sort of change. We didn't think that this sort of thing was possible or was going to happen. Um, and so if our words mean anything to you, please go go check it out. We're gonna post the resources again in the description, and we hope that you will take a look, that you will try the emotional work, and that you will stick with it in some way at least, because it is something that you have to stick with for a while. It's gonna feel worse before it feels better, because the start of it feels like uncovering a lot of pain, but it is uncovering pain that was already there and giving you the tools to move through that pain and finally move on with your life and start to really hear who you are, start to do what you really want to do, start to find your own power, start to move through life with direction and joy and levity and powerful connection. So we urge you to give it a shot and stick with it, at least for a little bit, for your sake and for our sake and for the sake of this wild, wonderful world that has been very sick for, to humans, a long time, to the universe barely a passing sigh. We love you. We know that we will get through this.